Welcome to our second video. So on this second video, we're going to talk about the scripting languages and native languages. The first thing that you need to understand, in our first video, we spoke about understanding the basic concept of computer concepts or computer concepts. So I'm going to use the same board, illustration board, which is MS Paint. The video now we're going to talk about scripting languages. Languages, what are languages? Languages are languages that a computer can understand, and they are programming languages which are made more easier for humans to understand. If you remember correctly, we had a computer here, then we had an operating system here, then we had a user here, which is our stickman. So I'm not going to draw a complete stickman. I'm just going to draw the top part without the torso. So the user could not understand the hardware directly because the hardware language was something different. Now, something has been created to actually make it more easier for advanced users of computers. These are programmers, or these are software developers. Now, software developers needed to learn these programming languages. These languages are used to actually communicate directly with the hardware. So, but in order for you to communicate with the hardware, obviously you need to go through the operating systems. But now you could just go directly and execute commands that can actually talk to the hardware directly. But obviously through the operating system, which will marshal the communication, so that when you are doing a mistake does not damage your computer. At least the operating system can just give you normal errors that would actually protect your computer, tell you that, okay, you've allocated too much memory and this computer has this limitation. That's why you get an error, things like that. Those errors are coming from the operating system, which is your middleman, which is your operating system, which is your middleman. Let's just put it here. So the programmer now needs to understand further than what we explained initially. They now need to understand the programming languages. These programming languages also, they are not really 100% machine language. They are also semi-machine language where you can actually write codes to do that. These codes are actually mostly in English, but it's not like your basic English that the person speaks daily, but there are some words that you can actually pick up from these languages. And now the programmer would write a function. Let's take a simple example. The programmer would write a function that will open a CD-ROM. This function would actually be written in a simple language like CD. Let's just take a simple example. Okay. CD. Okay, just gonna hold on a little bit. I'm just gonna my keyboard has actually freezed because it's a USB keyboard which uses batteries. So I think the batteries have an issue there. We'll get another battery. Just gonna pause the video a little bit. All right, now we actually have okay, functioning keyboard. So a simple thing like opening a CD-ROM, you can just say, maybe for example, in a certain programming language, they will say cd.eject. Now you see, I did not say cd.open. Some other programming language might have a library that allows you to say cd.open. Another will just say cd.eject. But you must look at the what do you call the language that is being used mostly in computers. You eject a CD, you don't open a CD or you don't close a CD. You just, for example, you can just eject a CD, is to open a CD-ROM, and then to close the CD-ROM, you can just say cd.close. And you see, after you say cd.close, you can just put bracket because it's a function. I'll explain the difference between a function and just a property. So let's just put a nice buttons. Now you see, I actually went to the keyboard and I typed these funny characters which you normally don't type in your daily life if you're not doing programming. So if you look at your keyboard, next to your enter key, you will see that there are keys that are actually grouped together. Your open bracket, curly bracket, close bracket, which can be accessed using shift. Your number 9 keyboard key is going to be, if you want to access that open bracket, you're gonna use the shift bracket. So that's how I get it. So you also use things like curly brackets. These are called curly brackets, and you would actually use things like your semicolon. Mostly it's used to tell the compiler or the language translator that this is the end of the statement. Mostly the curly bracket is just separation of the code or the functionality that's running. And we normally don't use a full stop. We use it just to call a function from an object. Then you will have a colon that is also used. Then you've got a parenthesis. So we normally use it to open. Mostly you do it in between to represent the string hello world. And you also have pipe. We use it as an or. If you must have both of them as an or, which means this, but an or represent this. Then you have okay, this I've shown you, and then you've got these brackets, which actually mostly it tells you the function, or you can use them in an if conditional statement. And we've got other funny characters that we normally use, like your exclamation mark. For example, this equal to that, this means not equal to. This is greater than, less than, equal to. What else? Some programming languages use the hash. Others use a $sign. Others use a percentage. Others use this key symbol, and then others use an AND. This is an AND key. So let's just expand this. So then you also have a star. A star means multiply. It's mostly used in mathematical calculations. And then you've got an underscore. There are naming conventions when it comes to variables. You also know what is a variable. It's a placeholder in the memory. And then you've got a plus. It's a normal plus. Then you've got a title. Also, in other programming languages, it's used. You've got a simple character there. So you also have a question mark, a forward slash, and a backslash, double forward slash, double backslash. In other languages, when you say you're commenting, in other languages, when you're doing this, you're commenting. And other languages, when you're doing this, you're commenting. So those are the symbols that programmers use. But in between there, you will see there are English words like, for example, echo, hello world. So this would just, in a normal language like your PHP, it will just display the words hello world. But you see there's a command echo there, which is not an everyday English word that a person would use to communicate. This is just a programming word. You'll find things like MSG box. These are functions. Hello world. You find this in most languages like your VB.NET, VB6, or whatever those old languages. And then you find things like alert, hello world. You find this in your JavaScript and everything. So I've gave you a few examples. There are different kind of programming languages. There are programming languages which are very powerful. They created programs that we use. They created operating systems. The programming language called C++. There's a programming language called C. There's a programming language called COBOL. There's a programming language called Delphi. There's a programming language called Java. There's a programming language called C Sharp. So it's not C hash, it's C Sharp. C Sharp. Then there's a programming language called VB.NET. There's a programming language called Python. Python. There's also a programming language called HTML, XML, what else can you have there? You've got different kind of programming language that you could use, your F#, all that. Now, these programming languages have advantages and there are disadvantages and all that. The main reason why we program is to make life easier for our users and also for ourselves if we are writing these programs for ourselves. Now, some of these programming languages are open source. When we say something is open source, it's something which is free. You don't need to pay to have it. The problem with open source software is that the functionality or the programming it's really not upgrading as it would with those paid ones. The paid ones are ones that are supplied by Microsoft. For example, C++, C is the first language which was used to create C++. C++ is a very powerful language. Most operating systems that you see were created using C++. Linux was created using C. And also C++ libraries, which are used today, which you will find in Ubuntu and everything. So C++ is also very powerful. It created a lot of operating systems that you see today that we spoke about. COBOL is a programming language which you would find a lot of POS system. You know, when you go to a shop, you see some funny a black screen with some numbers there. That is mostly created in COBOL and Delphi as well. You find most POS systems, we call them POS systems, those systems used in the shop for when you buy something and they use in the till. They're mostly created with COBOL and Delphi. Some of them in Java as well, but yeah. So Java, it's mostly it's one of the powerful languages which actually it can actually be used for web and also desktop. When we're talking about desktop, we're talking about an opposite of a website. Something that is not a website is a desktop application. Take for example the Paint program that we're using is a desktop application because I cannot put in a URL and start moving somewhere. So things like your team viewer, VLC, these are desktop applications, Adobe Viewer, and most of the applications that you see that anything that gets installed on a computer that has a setup that you can install is a desktop application. So just gonna minimize this a little bit. So these are desktop applications that you see. So C++ and C, they mainly create desktop applications. These are programs, desktop applications, or operating systems. So you must know the limitation of these programming languages. You mostly find this in POS systems. You can't create an operating system using that. You can, but what kind of operating system you would? Java, it cannot create an operating system. It's a very good language that you find in mobile. Android was created. Android, it's a operating system which is Linux-based operating system. It's called Android, and then you create Android software or Android apps using Java, or you can also create that using C Sharp. I'll show you. This is actually beyond the scope of this project, of this course. So mobile and desktop and web. So this one can actually create a lot. C Sharp can create mobile, web services. We can also create web services in Java as well. So web, and then they say desktop. So C Sharp and Java, you can see that they can actually create more. And VB.NET is the same as C Sharp. The difference is just the syntax is different. So they can also create that. Let's just expand this a little bit. Then you have Python. Python is a very powerful language. It can also create mobile, desktop, and web. And you've got this. Python is also open source. Let's just expand this. Okay. HTML, it's a language. You don't need software to actually do HTML. So HTML is only for web. So it's not desktop. You cannot create an HTML program or HTML page. We call them page. The websites that you see, they are HTML websites. Page. At the end, they produce HTML. Doesn't matter what they use to create those websites. XML is a form of a file which is structured in such a way. HTML is actually structured like your XML because you've got opening tags, closing tags. So this is mostly web, and you can just use the files for integration with our system. So F# it's just a new Microsoft language, not that popular. Well, if someone wants to argue, they will say yes, you can create the same thing that you would have for C# and everything. So these languages are actually just gonna put a star on those that are open source. So C is open source, C++ is open source, COBOL is open source, Delphi is open source, Java is open source, mostly managed by companies like Oracle, and then C# is really not open source. If you think about it, VB.NET is not open source. These are Microsoft languages. Python is open source. HTML open source. XML open source. You don't need to pay anyone to develop an HTML. And then F# is not open source. So if you look at the evolution of these different languages, you will see that these languages, they do try to evolve, but they are slow in evolving. Today, clients want something done today. You know how clients will do, they will say, they'll come to you or someone who wants a software. They'll say, hey man, can you create me a software that will do this and this and this and this and this and this? I want it like yesterday. You cannot just go and do that in C or C++ or Delphi or Java, because the time it will take for you to create those things, it's long because of open source moves slower, evolves slower as compared to the paid languages. C# is owned by Microsoft. Microsoft make sure that when someone say, hey man, can you create me a software that can just store data into the database when someone captures data from the phone, that can be easily done with C# very fast. You can actually do that within 2 days or a day. A simple app that can do that, or even 2 hours or 3 hours to do that. But if you want to do that in these other languages, you're gonna have to write a lot of code. You're gonna have to do a lot of things, unless you are really experienced in these things. But you also gonna struggle to do very simple things, because these are your open source software, which languages which are actually taking time to evolve. Microsoft add libraries that are that are making life easier for the developer to create applications very easily in a short space of time. Same applies to VB.NET, which is similar to C#. You can easily create something very quickly, just now. A website or anything, you can just do it directly with VB.NET or C#. And Python, it's very good also, but limitation. I don't think you can just easily create a website, a web application. In fact, Python, you can't create web applications. You can't create web applications. So um, they are open source. They take time to evolve, and a lot of companies create different versions of these languages with different uh, functionalities to make it easier for developers to try to cope in creating this. HTML is just your basic HTML, but really, if you create an HTML website, I'll create a simple HTML website for you. You will see a web page for you. You will see it's not that, it won't be that attractive up until you now create more styles and everything. With web pages, you find in ASP.NET, which is a Microsoft thing, and VB.NET, you will see immediately when you create a simple example website, it will just go and generate your HTML for you, and then it will be better than the normal HTML that I would create just going to a notepad and start typing HTML. But the purpose of this course is just to show you the basics of these technologies. XML mostly is used for integration, but you can store data inside XML and display data from XML. It can be viewed like as a web page and all that. And F sharp is another, I think it's a failed project from Microsoft. I'm not sure what they were trying to do there, but it can actually do most of the things that they can do up here, but it's a different language. The things that they try to create another language, I'm not sure why they do that, but they try to create another language. So those are the programming languages. C# and Java, they're the same. They don't do multiple inheritance. They implement interfaces. This is the difference between C# and C++, and between Java and C++. Java and C++ are different because of multiple inheritance. C++ can do multiple inheritance. C# can't do multiple inheritance, and it implements interfaces. That is an advanced concept which is not part of this course. And let's see. So now these are your programming languages. Now on top of this, we've got native and scripting languages. So native languages, I like to say, I just gave it native language because of now these are your hardcore languages. Like let's just put a hash next to a native language. This language actually, it is not a scripting language. It needs to be compiled before the program can be used. C++ needs to be compiled. A operating system needed to be compiled before it can be installed on this machine or distributed. C++ is also a native language. COBOL is also a native language. Delphi is also a native language. Java is also a native language. C++, C# is also a native language. VB.NET is a native language. Python is a native language. HTML is a scripting language. Well, it's a hypertext markup language. It's a script. Let's put it under a scripting language. I'm just going to put a star extra. XML scripting. F# native. Let's add another one here. I think you've heard about it. PHP. The first version of Facebook was done in PHP. PHP is a scripting language. Let's just do this scripting language. PHP is only for web. You cannot create a Windows application, a desktop application using PHP. Now, those are your languages and native languages and scripting languages. The difference between native and scripting languages, as I've said, for you to have an output, you need to compile for a scripting language, for a native language. For a scripting language, you don't need to compile. They just compile. They're using interpreters that will just run on fly. So that is the difference between the two. Let's see if we've answered. Yeah. So that's the difference between native languages and scripting languages. That will be the end of this video for